Union.
The following is a sponsored program paid for by First Alliance Credit Union. Welcome to Good Money Moves, featuring Jenna Taubel from First Alliance Credit Union and Andy Brownell. Here's Andy Brownell on Rochester's News Talk, 1340 KROC AM and 96.9 FM.
It's time for Good Money Moves on News Talk 1340 KROC AM and 96.9 FM. I'm Andy Brownell, along with Jenna Taubel, the Director of Brand and Digital Member Experience at First Alliance Credit Union. Hello, Jenna.
Hey, Andy.
Good to hear from you again. Yeah. Last week, we talked about financial literacy in terms of talking to children with some tips and ideas about, getting the beginnings of learning how to manage money. What's the topic today?
Yeah, today we're going to continue our conversation about youth financial literacy. April is Youth Financial Literacy Month at First Alliance Credit Union. So this is a topic that we care a lot about and we really enjoy talking about. So we're going to keep talking about it today. But we're going to take a little bit different approach with it. A lot of times when people think about youth financial literacy, they assume it's talking about teaching young children, elementary age kids, the basic of money and kind of showing them how to maybe start saving a little bit. A lot of what we talked about last week. However, it is just as important to teach teenagers the principles of money management as well. And you can actually use some of the same concepts of that save, share, spend that we've talked about before on this show to teach those concepts to teenagers. And it's important because they're becoming more independent. And so they're going to have more opportunities to use these principles. And they can also understand the financial concepts a lot better than, elementary school age kids can. But this means that you can kind of start talking about some of the more advanced ways to manage your money as well. Again, using those same basic principles of save, spend, share, that philosophy to kind of guide those conversations. So really this week, we're revisiting that concept and focusing on how you talk to your teens about it.
Yeah, get them to realize there's more to it than just spend.
Yeah.
All right. So where should we start with the teenage set and teaching them financial literacy?
Yeah. So before you can teach anybody how to manage money, right, they first have to have it or understand at least how to earn money. So that's kind of the first piece of the puzzle here. Commonly, teenagers are going to earn money through an allowance if they're in their early teens, or maybe if they're a little bit older, 15, 16, 17, they maybe have a part-time job. And we did touch on the topic of allowance last week, but when it comes to teens, it's even more important that there's that structure in place of how they go about earning that money. So instead of just giving them money from each of your paychecks, kind of give them that commission for chores, so to speak, those chores that they've performed. And think about how much you're giving your teen in allowance and then break that down by the chores that they've completed. For instance, if you pay your child $50 out of every paycheck for their allowance, you'd pay them $10 for unloading the dishwasher, $10 for vacuuming, $20 for keeping their room clean, $5 for taking out the trash, maybe another $5 for clearing the dinner table after supper time.
So
however you want to work that.
So directly tie the payments to an activity.
Exactly. So they really start to make that solid connection of, I earned this money by doing a chore, by working for it. Because that's the reality of life. Nothing comes for free anymore. So I don't know if it ever did, but it definitely not anymore.
Well, the funny one is you mentioned $20 for keeping the room clean. After running through a couple teenagers, I don't know if that's quite enough incentive because that one seems to be a real difficult one for them.
Yes, I still
have to raise
that in my household too. Yeah. Well, maybe it's got to be more. Maybe there's got to be another carrot involved there. Yeah. But yeah,
you got to find another task.
Yes. Yeah. However you want to structure it, there's no necessarily right or wrong way. It's just really making sure that the money that you're giving them is tied to them earning it in some way. It could be tied to grades. If they're getting good grades in school, you're going to give them X amount of dollars. That's another way that you can structure it.
Washing the car, In my case, keeping the garage clean.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, absolutely. Work ethic.
Yeah, exactly. And it just helps put in the teenager's mind that having to earn that money is part of the process, that they're not just going to receive it for existing. And as I mentioned to a lot of teenagers, especially when they start to approach, 15, 16, they start getting part-time jobs. And when they do, this is a really important milestone where you should be sitting down and talking with them about how much they'll be earning and start having conversations about saving some of that money as well. Because as they start to become more financially independent with this job and they're earning their own money independently from you, it's also a good time to probably start rolling back some of that allowance that they're receiving.
You bet.
And not only because, well, if they're working a part-time job, they're not going to be home as much to do some of those chores, but also to help them become more financially independent from you. You don't want them being financially dependent on you for that extra income. It should be something that they're taking ownership of.
And it's been a sad trend that I've seen over the last 20 years that fewer and fewer high school kids are taking on part-time jobs. There's plenty that still are.
Mm-hmm.
But as a percentage of all of them, it's big, they're the sports, there's a lot of different activities. But it's such a valuable lesson.
Yeah.
To work through those years and have that foundation of this is how it all works. And just the self-esteem part of it too, to receive that paycheck.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Of course, Jenna, all good suggestions. And I guess maybe I'm just going to throw at you what other tips, because this is such an important lesson to learn. And I know so many young people who somehow did not learn it until it wasn't too late, but they're well into their 20s and it's time to get going and they don't have that foundation yet.
Yeah, exactly. And, I would say, once your teen really starts having some form of regular money coming into their bank account, the most important conversation you can have is saving a portion of that paycheck. And really stressing that. Again, it doesn't have to be the entire amount. It doesn't have to be 50%, but a reasonable amount. This is where they really have to start to learn to manage the funds that they have. So, it's not about setting, strict rules about how much they have to save. It's more about helping guide that conversation for them to come up with that framework that's going to work for them. So, it's about having those conversations of these are the things that you need to start planning for in the future. How much money do you think you should save to reach these milestones or these goals? And you can even talk about too, what are the things that you want to be able to buy now? And what are those things that you want to save for in the future? And start having them kind of start to realize that there's a difference between the stuff that they need to pay for in the immediate. And they do have expenses. If they have a car, they got to put gas in it themselves. A lot of times, if they have a phone, they need to buy, pay that plan themselves. Or, there are things that you can give them, those bills that you can give them where they have to start being responsible for that stuff. And that's also a really good introduction to money management, is having those formal responsibilities so that the money that they're earning isn't just all of it's fun money. It's really important that that's not the case. And it's okay to have that fun money too. They might want to have some money to eat meals out with their friends or to buy a new app or buy some clothes that they really like. Those are all good things. Those are all okay things for them to want. They just need to make sure that they're planning ahead for those types of expenses so that they're not selling themselves short for future goals that they might want, like going to a summer concert or buying a new car for themselves. It'd be a used car, but a newer car for themselves, or even saving money for college expenses. But at the end of the day, no matter what their goals are, long-term, short-term, it's important that you're working with your teenager to help them figure out what those goals are and what the priority of those goals are. And are they short term? Are they long term? Are they really just, you know what, you need to just set up a slush fund to do these fun things as they happen.
Sure.
Kind of just start having those real conversations about what it is to set up a spending plan, set up a budget.
So the basic part is split it into savings and immediate spending, and that is the beginning of a budget or a spending plan in essence.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
We'll take a quick break, Jenna, and we'll come back and we're talking more about financial literacy with teenagers, expanding on what we already talked about the previous week with the younger kids. It's Good Money Moves, and we'll return in a moment on News Talk 1340, KROC AM and 96.9 FM.
Good Money Moves continues in moments with Andy Brownell and Jenna Taubel from First Alliance Credit Union. This is News Talk 1340, KROC AM and 96.9 FM. Money Moves with Andy Brownell and Jenna Taubel from First Alliance Credit Union on Rochester's News Talk 1340 KROC AM and 96.9 FM.
Welcome back to Good Money Moves. Jenna Taubel with First Alliance Credit Union with us, of course. I'm Andy Brownell. We're talking about financial literacy for teenagers and teaching them the basics of managing money. You covered getting ready to have them save some money if they have that part-time job. And I know from my experience was when I finally got a job as a teenager and that paycheck started coming in, I would run short every paycheck. How's that?
Yeah.
My appetite was larger than my earnings.
Yes. Yeah. That money burns a hole in your pocket when you first start getting those paychecks.
So what other things do we want to cover as far as the very beginnings of money management for the teenager?
Yeah. So another piece of this puzzle is that share portion. And it's really important that you do talk to your kids about not just saving the money, not just how to spend the money appropriately, but also giving back. This is a really important piece that is actually really good for self-esteem. And it's also good for, setting them up to be generous community members in the future, which is important for wherever they end up living. It's going to contribute positively to the community that they live in. This is an important lesson. And so you do want to kind of start to have those conversations with your kids about, I should say teenagers, about what issues are they most passionate about. And, not to generalize, but because these younger generations are online more, they do have a actually very well-developed sense of the issues that they care about, and they're actually quite informed about them. So this can also be an important opportunity to get to know your teenager a little bit better while talking about this. So are they concerned? Do they have concerns about the environment, about supporting marginalized communities, about economic inequalities, mental health issues? The list goes on and on.
Sure.
But having those conversations and then using that passion to help them figure out how can they use the money that they have to contribute to these issues that they're passionate about or that they care about. So, and no matter what cause, that your teenager wants to support, it's important that they understand that most of these groups are supported through the contributions of everyday people and not just through government grants or corporate funding. And so that they can really make a difference in using even just a little bit here and there to support those organizations. Let them know that their contribution really is an essential part of a nonprofit organization's existence and that every little bit counts. And from there you can kind of talk about how much they'd like to give from each paycheck. Again, you don't have to lay down strict rules of you are going to do this amount, but help them set up guidelines that they can kind of work around or think through. And it's going to be, a little bit harder than setting up those savings guidelines. Again, you don't want them to feel like they have to give their whole paycheck away. but it is a good habit for them to start to build early in life. So when they do contribute money to a worthy cause, they're going to, feel like they're making that positive difference in the world. Again, it's also, having them go through this exercise is going to give them a sense of pride and accomplishment and really help them feel more connected to the cause when they're giving money to something that's for good in their eyes. And of course, if, maybe contributing financially isn't a feasible option, it can also be a really good opportunity to encourage them to volunteer their time instead. That's also a really good way to share without necessarily having to spend what little money they have from their paycheck. But it can, again, giving back, it's part of building that financial responsibility, because when you have something more than someone else, it's always beneficial to the greater community if you're helping to promote that within your kids as they're learning to manage their money.
When you're having these discussions, are there any general guidelines of a percentage that you might want to introduce, or is that just going to be a free-flowing discussion?
I don't know that there is a specific percentage. I think that's going to be different for everybody. But really, whatever makes you feel like you're making a difference, whatever makes you feel that it's an affordable amount to you, so that you still need to be able to meet your savings goals. You still need to have, fun with your money. You still need to be able to meet your other financial responsibilities. So whatever that amount looks like is going to be different for everybody. And it's also going to be different based on maybe the type of thing that they're passionate about. Maybe
Sure.
One thing may encourage them to give more than another. So,
and I can imagine if you're the parent or guardian or responsible adult, it's important for you to separate yourself a little bit from the discussion, because what you find important might be extraordinarily different than what your teenager finds important.
Exactly. Yeah, that's why, again, let them kind of decide how they want to do that. And you can, of course, give them ideas and let them know, hey, these are the organizations that I support, and these are why they're important to me. And you can start the conversation that way and kind of let them, and maybe they don't know out the gate, and that's okay too, but encourage them to kind of think about that a little bit more, because it is an important part of growing up, I think. You know, even just taking that money conversation out of it, finding out what you're passionate about is part of growing up.
Very good. We're talking about financial literacy for the teenagers, and we're on Good Money Moves, and we'll return in a moment on News Talk 1340, KROC AM and 96.9 FM.
Good Money Moves continues in moments with Andy Brownell and Jenna Taubel from First Alliance Credit Union. This is News Talk 1340, KROC AM and 96.9 FM. Good Money Moves with Andy Brownell and Jenna Taubel from First Alliance Credit Union on Rochester's News Talk 1340 KROC AM and 96.9 FM.
Welcome back. Good Money Moves, financial literacy for teenagers. All right. We've covered the spending. We've covered being a good member of our community. I know the important part now, the spending part. what do the teenagers need to know about spending?
Yeah, spending is definitely the fun part of the save, share, spend philosophy. Everyone knows the temptation of spending money, and while you want to give your teen more independence with this, you also want to give them some safeguards that are going to help them consider the best ways to spend their money. So for instance, you could say, your teenager can spend up to X number of dollars without needing to get your permission. Or you can say that they can spend their money freely at certain stores, but they might need your permission to spend money at other stores. Or since most transactions these days are cashless, your teen will probably also want to have a debit or credit card, which on one hand, this does mean that they won't feel that immediate effects of spending. We've talked about that in the past, where spending with a debit or a credit card, you kind of remove yourself from spending that money a little bit. There's less of an emotional attachment to it versus when you have to hand over that wad of cash. It feels a little bit different. So, they won't have to take the money out of their account and just hand it over there if they're swiping. But that doesn't mean you can't still have some controls in place for helping them spend appropriately. You can use card control apps like the First Alliance's My Card feature in our mobile banking. You can set spending thresholds on cards. You can even limit where the card can be used. Or if, maybe they've lost privileges, you can shut the card off completely. So there are tools out there to help you still manage that flow of money as your teens are learning how to manage their money appropriately. Another thing to think about is if, your kid does make a mistake spending money.
They will.
Maybe they will. They definitely will. Maybe they spent too much on one thing, or maybe they miscalculated how much money they had left in their account. And, if this happens, do not rush in to save them. Let them feel the negative consequences of their actions. These are natural consequences to these actions, and these are going to teach them very important lessons. And if you come swoop in and save them and put money back in their account, make sure that, or give them money so they can still go to this movie they wanted to go to, whatever it is, they are not going to learn from that. So, maybe they might not be able to put as much money into their savings as they hoped, or maybe they're going to have to pay some overdraft fees, but it might feel harsh. But it's not. It's the best way for them to learn. And at the same time,
it's supposed to feel a little harsh.
Yeah, it is. I mean, as a parent, you always want to keep your kids in that bubble and keep them safe. But it's okay to let them fall on their face sometimes. It really is.
True story for me. I overwrote a check one time when I was a teenager to a gas station, a service shop back then. And I actually knew the owner of the place. I had conversations with him because he was another car guy. And it was just an honest mistake. I goofed up and my check bounced. Yeah. And I had to go back to him, and pay him cash for that check plus his fee. Yeah. I think back then it was $15. Yeah. And I was so embarrassed to do it. Yeah. And I was mad at myself. And he was such a kind person. And he took my check down off the bad person wall and handed it to me and ripped it up. And he said, you're welcome to come back here, Andy. You were honest. And it was a really important lesson to me.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Didn't happen those are again.
Yes. I can remember many times as a teen overdrawing my account because I didn't realize, maybe I did, buy one too many coffees, or maybe I, did go out a few too many times at the mall and treat myself a little too much. Those are the lessons you learn. Yeah. But it's, it's also important that as they're learning these life lessons, that you aren't adding insult to injury by being really harsh on them about these mistakes. They're probably, as you probably were, Andy, and I certainly know I was, well aware of the mistake that had been made, and if my parents had been really negative towards me, at that moment in time, it would have only made me feel worse, and your kids would feel that same way. And so it's important that instead of making them feel worse about it, that you help them then brainstorm solutions moving forward. Okay, acknowledge that this happened. If they own up to their mistake, then it's about, okay, well, how do we keep this from happening in the future? What's your plan to keep this from happening in the future? How do they want to solve this? What do they need to do differently next time? What have they learned from this experience? And just have an open dialogue. It doesn't have to be punitive. It should be really an opportunity to just talk through how to make better choices next time.
Lessons learned. It's always important.
Yes.
And as always, you provide some fantastic information, Jenna. And financial literacy is one of my favorite topics. I wish we could talk about it for a lot longer than we have time to talk about it. But we are at that point in the program where I'm going to ask you where we can find out more about helping our younger people become financially literate.
Yes. As always, I encourage our listeners to visit our website, firstalliancecu.com. You can get subscribed to our blog where we release new financial tips and advice every week. You can go back and listen to past episodes of this show at firstalliancecu.com/podcast or on krocnews.com. You can also subscribe to Good Money Moves on Apple, Google, and Spotify podcasts. And of course, if you love this show, please take a minute to leave us a review on your favorite podcasting platform. Or if you have a financial topic that you'd like us to cover or questions you'd like answered about money on Good Money Moves, please feel free to send me an email at marketing@firstalliancecu.com. And as I mentioned earlier, April, which is just around the corner, is Youth Financial Literacy Month. So take a minute to check out our website at firstalliancecu.com and follow us on Facebook and Instagram so that you can learn a little bit more about some of the exciting contest information that we have coming up. Starts and it runs April 1st through April 30th. It's a Youth Month contest. And you can even open a youth or teen account online on our website.
Excellent.
So, and if you do have questions about helping your kids, or maybe you just have questions about managing your own money, of course, I encourage you to reach out to our team at First Alliance Credit Union. They're here to help you start making good money moves today.
I thought of another thing, Jenna, with the use of the debit cards for the teenagers, the My Money app.
Yeah.
If you taught them to check it every day or every time after they make a purchase, it will almost instantly show the money being deducted from their accounts.
Yes.
Would it? Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. There's a lot of tools available these days to help you keep on top of your finances. So yes, and absolutely teach your teens how to use those effectively.
Excellent. And of course, that is First Alliance Credit Union, federally insured by NCUA and an equal housing lender. Thanks a lot, Jenna. And we will do this again next week as Good Money Moves on News Talk 1340, KROC AM and 96.9